Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today, we're going to be looking at these LLMs, large language models, the
hmm
AI systems that can write code or essays or even answer those really complex questions. But we've got this research paper here, and it's really going to challenge what we think we know about how these AIs think,
hmm
especially when they're trying to solve these really hard problems. The title of the paper is Thoughts Are All Over the Place on the Underthinking of GPT-like LLMs.
Interesting.
Yeah. So underthinking, it's kind of counterintuitive, right? I mean, these
Yeah.
AI systems are supposed to be super smart, but this research is saying they might not be thinking as deeply as we think they are.
Yeah, it is a bit of a paradox. We tend to think, more complexity equals deeper thought, especially when it comes to AI. But as we dig into this paper, we'll see that might not always be the case.
So this research really focuses on how LLMs, these GPT-like things, can sometimes switch between all these different reasoning strategies way too quickly, especially when they run into a really difficult problem. Like imagine you're trying to solve a puzzle, but instead of just sticking with one approach, you constantly jump between all these different methods without really giving any of them a shot. That's kind of what's happening here.
It's like trying to learn a new skill, but you keep switching between different techniques. You never actually master any of them.
Exactly. So what's the problem with all this switching then?
Well, it could mean that the AI is just wasting all this effort and not actually getting to the best solution. Like it's not really giving each approach enough thought to see if it's going to work or not.
And the researchers actually visualize this in the paper in figure 1. It compares the thought switching that happens when the AI gets the answer right versus when it gets it wrong.
Well,
And you know what? There's a lot more switching when the AI is going towards the wrong answer.
hmm, it is a bit counterintuitive. You'd think exploring more options would lead to, better results. But this suggests that sometimes too much exploration can actually lead the AI astray.
Okay, so to really put these AI systems to the test, they use some seriously challenging problems. Math 500, which has all these high school math competition questions, GPQA Diamond, which has these graduate level science questions, and AIM, which is this notoriously hard math competition.
Yeah, these are problems that are specifically designed to make even, really bright minds struggle a bit. We're not talking about simple calculations here. These are the kind of problems that really require some, deep strategic thinking.
And here's where things get really interesting. The research found that as the problems got harder, the frequency of thought switching actually increased. You would think they would buckle down and concentrate, right?
You absolutely would. This finding suggests that when the AI is faced with like a real brain twister, it might not be allocating its thinking resources in the best way. It's almost as if it gets overwhelmed and just loses focus.
Yep. Yeah, and the paper even gives a specific example in figure 2 using this pretty complex math problem. The AI actually generates 25 different thoughts while it's trying to solve it, but it keeps jumping between them without ever reaching a solid conclusion. So, if exploring all these different options isn't always the best, then how do we measure this underthinking? It's not like we can just ask the AI to explain what it's thinking, right?
Right, that's where this underthinking metric comes in. It's a way to quantify how much of the AI's output actually contributes to it reaching a correct thought. So it's not just about whether the AI gets the answer right or wrong, it's about how it gets there.
So it's kind of like a teacher grading not just your answer, but also showing your work.
Precisely. We want to see if the AI is actually like reasoning through the problem
Hmm.
or if it's just sort of stumbling upon the answer.
Yeah. And when they applied this metric, they found that even some of the most advanced AI models showed really high underthinking scores, meaning they were generating a lot of output that wasn't really helping them find the right solution. So what does all this mean for the future of AI? If even the most sophisticated models are prone to this underthinking, I mean, are we headed for trouble?
Not at all. It just means we need to be more aware of this tendency and look for ways to address it. Remember, AI is still a developing technology, and we're learning more and more about how to make it think more effectively all the time.
Okay, so let's talk about solutions. The researchers proposed this technique called thought switching penalty, or TIPP. It sounds kind of like something you'd use to train a puppy, but it's actually a pretty sophisticated approach.
So imagine the AI is generating text, like in that math problem we talked about. Each word or symbol it produces is like a step in its thought process. Now, certain words or phrases, like alternatively, or on the other hand, or even a sudden change in topic, signal that the AI might be switching to a new thought.
So they become kind of like little red flags, indicating that the AI might be shifting its thinking.
Exactly. And what tip does is it makes those red flag words less likely to appear during text generation. It's like gently nudging the AI to stick with its current line of reasoning just a little bit longer.
Instead of immediately jumping to alternatively, the AI is encouraged to really explore that initial approach more thoroughly.
That's a great way to put it. And the really nice thing about tip is that it doesn't require us to, like, rewrite the entire AI's code
Yeah.
or retrain it from scratch.
Yeah, that would be a massive undertaking. So you're saying this simple penalty system can actually significantly improve the AI's problem-solving abilities. What kind of results are we seeing?
Well, let's take a closer look at those results in part 2 of our deep dive.
All right, so stay tuned because we're going to be uncovering how researchers are tackling this underthinking challenge and explore what it all means for the future of AI. We'll be back right after this.
That's good.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're continuing to talk about this underthinking in AI, where even the most powerful systems can kind of have trouble with deep focused reasoning. And right before the break, we were just about to look at the results of this thought switching penalty or tip. It's kind of giving the AI a little nudge to stay focused and explore its ideas more.
Right, encouraging that deeper thinking, not just, more thinking.
So let's look at those results. What kind of impact did this tip thing have on the AI's problem solving?
The results are pretty interesting. Table 3 in the paper shows that using tip actually led to some big improvements in accuracy. And this was across all 3 of those challenging test sets we talked about: MAD 500, GPQA Diamond, and AIM.
Wow. So just by encouraging the AI to think a little longer before switching gears, we're seeing it get way better at solving these tough problems.
Yeah, it shows how important it is to not just come up with lots of ideas, but to know when to really dig deeper into one that seems promising.
It's like the difference between brainstorming a ton of ideas for a project and actually like sitting down and fleshing out one of those ideas into a real plan.
Yeah, exactly. And the best part is we got these improvements without having to, like, retrain the whole AI model.
That's a huge time saver. So a simple tweak makes the AI more accurate without massive retraining. That's pretty powerful.
It shows how much potential there is in finding these clever ways to fine-tune how AI uses what it already knows. We don't always have to start from scratch.
This is all really cool, but I'm sure there are still some challenges, right? And like more research to be done. What are some of the key takeaways for people who are fascinated by AI, but maybe aren't experts in the field?
Well, one of the biggest takeaways is that developing truly intelligent AI is a journey. It's not just about making these models bigger and more complex. It's also about figuring out how to make them think well and efficiently.
So it's not just about the size of the brain, but how you use it.
Exactly. And this research on underthinking shows us something really important about that challenge. It's all about finding the right balance between exploring lots of options and staying focused. We want AI that can think outside the box, but also knows when to zero in on something promising.
Kind of like in our own lives. Sometimes we need to broaden our horizons and look at things from different angles, but other times we need to really focus and go deep on one particular thing.
For sure. And figuring out how to teach AI to do both is key to unlocking its potential.
This whole conversation is making me think. If AI struggles with staying focused and thinking things through, what does that say about us? I mean, are we also susceptible to this underthinking?
That's a really interesting question, and one that this research kind of brings up. We talk about AI being like human intelligence, but maybe by studying AI, we can actually learn something new about how our own minds work.
Like AI is a mirror reflecting back at us.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe by figuring out how to make AI think better, we can find ways to improve our own thinking too. It could go both ways.
That's something to think about. But before we get too deep into those big questions, we got to take a quick break. Don't worry, we'll be right back to wrap up our deep dive into underthinking and see what it all means for the future of AI. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about this underthinking in AI, where even the most advanced systems sometimes don't quite get that deep, focused reasoning we think of with, like, real intelligence. But it's not just theoretical, is it? I mean, as AI becomes more common in our lives, this underthinking could actually have real-world consequences, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about self-driving cars.
Mhm.
Those AI systems need to be able to make split-second decisions, in these complex, constantly changing environments. And if there's any underthinking going on there, well, that could be a big problem.
Yeah, that is a little unsettling to think about. Like, we're putting so much trust in these AI systems, but this research is saying they might not always be up for the challenge.
Right. But it's not that AI is inherently unreliable. It's more that it's still a work in progress, right?
Mhm.
Just like any new technology, there are going to be bumps in the road.
So what does all this mean for the future of AI then? Is this underthinking something we can fix? Or is it just like a fundamental limitation of these systems?
I'm actually pretty optimistic.
Hmm.
Research like this paper is so important because it helps us see these limitations so we can find ways to deal with them, like developing TIPI, that thought-switching penalty. It's a great example of how we can make AI better without having to completely redesign it from the ground up.
So it's like we're learning how to train AI to be smart, but also to be smart in the right way.
Exactly. It's about teaching them to think strategically, to know when to dig deep and when to branch out.
It almost sounds like we're talking about parenting, but for AI.
Haha. There are definitely some parallels there. Like with kids, we need to guide AI as it develops so it can reach its full potential.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from all this?
Hmm. I'd say it's this. AI is an incredibly powerful tool. It has the potential to completely change our world in so many ways. But it's not magic. We need to understand its limits, like this tendency to underthink. And we have to keep supporting research that helps us develop AI responsibly.
So it's about recognizing that AI is a partner, not a replacement. We need to work together, humans and AI, to make sure it's used for good. And that's a future worth working towards. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI underthinking. Until next time, keep those minds curious.